When talking about the biggest NBA draft busts in history, Anthony Bennett's name comes up often, and for good reason. After being drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers number 1 overall in 2013, Anthony Bennett only lasted 4 seasons in the NBA, and only one of them with the original team that drafted him in the Cavs. And throughout that time period, he only averaged 4.5 points per game, 3.1 rebounds, and 0.5 assists per game. And it wasn't like injuries or anything like that was out of his control derailed his career. Anthony Bennett just never translated over to the NBA level. And I think a lot of people saw this even coming out of the draft, because going into the draft process, Anthony Bennett was not projected to be a top 5 pick even, much less the first pick. And on the ESPN broadcast of the NBA draft in 2013, when the commissioner announced that Anthony Bennett was the number 1 overall pick, you could hear a tangible gasp from the analysts and the crowd, because nobody expected Anthony Bennett to be the number 1 overall pick. And this NBA draft was considered to be weak at the time, but ended up having some really good prospects in it, kind of like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is now an MVP and a champion in the NBA. But Anthony Bennett will go down in history as one of the all-time biggest busts in all of history, as the fact that he only played 4 seasons in the league, and after those 4 seasons, nobody was willing to give a shot to a kid that was drafted number 1 overall, shows how bad of a career he actually had. Born in Toronto, Canada, Anthony Bennett was a star throughout his entire high school career and was the 7th ranked player in his entire class before committing to UNLV, or the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And throughout his first year in university, he averaged 16 points per game and 8 rebounds a game on 59% shooting from the field and 37.5% from 3, which is really solid numbers. And even though he played against a lower competition level in college, playing in the Mountain West Conference as opposed to maybe the ACC or the SEC, Anthony Bennett was still considered to be a top 10 to 15 prospect in the NBA draft, and was considered to be a guy that had the physical tools to be great, but was just a work in progress. And if an NBA team drafted him, he was considered to be a project type player. And that's why going up until the draft, he was not considered to be in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick at all. And he was projected to be about anywhere from the 5th overall pick to the 15th overall pick, anywhere from the 5th pick to the end of the lottery, basically. And the Cleveland Cavaliers, who had the number 1 overall pick that year after being pretty bad the year before, decided to use their number 1 overall pick on Anthony Bennett. And no one can really justify this situation or this decision that they made, but imagine that the Cleveland Cavaliers had taken Giannis Antetokounmpo in that 2013 draft, and then they had paired Giannis alongside LeBron for all those years. That team would have been absolutely unstoppable. But Anthony Bennett, when he came into the league, he didn't look terrible his first season, and people really did think that he could maybe develop into a really solid player throughout his NBA career. But after his first season in the NBA, where he averaged only 4.2 points per game on 35% from the field and didn't start a single game, he was traded to Minnesota in the trade that got Cleveland back Kevin Love. And that obviously turned out to be a well-worth investment, because Kevin Love was a key part of all those finals runs with LeBron and ended up winning a championship with LeBron and Kyrie in Cleveland. In Bennett's second season in the NBA in Minnesota, he started 3 games and played 57 and improved his scoring average to only 5.2 points per game. But this time he shot 42% from the field instead of 35. And while that is a slight improvement, to say the least, it was still improvement, and people really did think that he could maybe break out in his 3rd season. But he ended up being shipped to Toronto, where he only played 19 games in his 3rd NBA season, averaging 1.5 points in only 4.4 minutes per game. And that was his hometown team that wanted to give him a chance. And as a Raptors fan, I do remember trading for him and thinking, hey, maybe we could develop him into being something worthwhile, but that just never happened. And then in 2016, 2017, he went to the Brooklyn Nets as a 23-year-old. And after playing 23 games and starting one, averaging 5 points per game, he never played in the NBA ever again. So his last season in the NBA was as a 23-year-old, 4-year veteran. And after that, he did bounce around the NBA G League, as well as bouncing around the overseas circuit, and played for a few teams, including the Northern Arizona Suns and Maine Red Claws of the NBA G League, but never was able to make it back to the NBA level. And he has played in some national team tournaments over his time. And in July 2015, Bennett was named to the Canadian national team roster for the 2015 Pan American Games. And in his hometown in Toronto, they won the silver medal and actually beat the United States in that tournament before losing to Brazil in the final. And Bennett was solid, averaging 15.5 points and 10.5 rebounds in that game. But in all honesty, Anthony Bennett is probably the biggest bust in NBA history, because he went from playing at a high level in university and being drafted number 1 overall by the Cleveland Cavaliers to being retired by the age of 28 years old. And 28 was when he was supposed to be in his physical prime. And as an athletic big man, this was supposed to be the time in his career where he was dominating the most. And it's kind of sad to see that Anthony Bennett did flame out in the NBA, because he is a center that is more old school. And if he had been drafted in the 1990s or even early 2000s, I think Anthony Bennett could have actually been a pretty solid player because of his back to the basket style. But the fact that he was a little bit slower defensively and could not shoot the three consistently at the NBA level was the main reason why he did not make it to a long NBA career, and why he could not maintain his time in the NBA. And in all honesty, I would have loved to see him and LeBron team up if Anthony Bennett had been just that much better. Imagine a dominant big man alongside LeBron James and the damage that they could have done even with Kyrie. Imagine a pick and roll with Kyrie and Anthony Bennett if Bennett had been really solid, and then they can kick it out to LeBron on a cut or wherever. That would have been an insane trio. Or even if the Cleveland Cavaliers could have gone and got Giannis Antetokounmpo, that would have been an insane trio, Kyrie, LeBron, and Giannis, for a long time. And I think that LeBron may have stayed in Cleveland if that had happened. But we'll never know what would have happened. And that's the sad part about sports sometimes. And also the fun part is speculating what could have happened. Anyways, let me know who you think is the biggest bust in NBA history in the comment section below. God bless you all. I hope you have an amazing day. And make sure to like the video and subscribe, because I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the summer. God bless.